So we're talking here for delivery for the 2018 exam series. So our principal concern to ensure the parity of experience. In order to ensure this consistency, we've maintained the requirements for control conditions. However, as a project will no longer be formally marked, we're allowing teacher feedback. Moving forward, we'll review the controls for the cohort that will be certifying in 2019. So that cohort, your year 10s currently certifying in 2019, will have to undertake a project delivered and published by us in September 2018. And the control conditions for them we will review and in a very good time communicate those control conditions to you. So why have Pearson retained the internet block when other awarding bodies have not? Well, we've carefully considered the removal of the internet block, and we've decided that since many candidates have worked under this restriction to date, it would be appropriate for the restriction to stay in place for this session. And I don't think all awarding bodies have reduced or removed the internet block. Will the remaining examination components be weighted 50-50? Yeah, that is true. Component 1 will be 50% and component 2 will be 50%. Nothing in any of those specs or assessments will change. It's just that the weighting will go to 50-50 where it was 40-40. Carrying on now to administration for the June 2018 series. What will need to be submitted? So in order that we can show that we've collected evidence that 20 hours has been completed, we're going to ask centres to provide work from all candidates on a CD or DVD or memory stick, along with the NEAR forms with the candidate and teacher declaration. So those forms, it could be just page 7. You don't have to include detailed stage-by-stage marks in this. And in addition, the head of centre will need to do the centre NEA declaration. So all of that will be posted off to an address that we will make available well in advance of the 15th of May on a CD, DVD or memory stick. What are we going to be doing with it? We've committed to monitoring that work to ensure that, in our opinion, candidates have undertaken the project and that each candidate's individual project represents 20 hours work. So that's what will be happening with the evidence we receive. Talking now about the delivery for the June 19 exam series. Will Pearson be relaxing the controls? For the 2019 series, we will further review controls. We will carefully consider control conditions well in advance of September 2018. So by the time your year 10s will have their project published, we will have communicated to all of our centres what the control conditions need to be for those students. My year 10 candidates have done more than 20 hours programming on mock NEA tasks. Can this be used as evidence? No, we've been asked that. It's very clear the students certifying in 2019 have to do the project that we publish in September 2018, and that's the same with all of the awarding bodies. When will Pearson release the project for the 2019 exam session? So it'll be available on our page 1st of September 2018. So short and sweet, that's the new control conditions and our FAQs, and I'm ready to take questions. So the first person with their name up.
How will you know if the students have done 20 hours of work?
Okay, thank you. How will we know? So we're going to be looking at the work and monitoring it, and the exact way that we're going to be able to judge whether it's 20 hours work is not clear. It needs to be understood that the teacher's authentication and the centre document that's provided by the head of centre will be an important part of that, judging that that's your hand. Would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, for students who are now aware that the NEA does not count towards their final grade, I personally have a few students who probably will not do the rest of the controllers of the NEA task. They've done about 15 hours so far. Obviously, I'll take sanctions in school for not doing work, but what do we do with students when I submit work? It does not look like 20 hours.
I would suggest that you do everything you can to encourage the students to make a good fist of it. It should be an enriching and useful exercise. The time has to be given, so if they're sitting there refusing to work, it's not like it's doing them any good for their component 1 or 2. So we're going to do everything that you can to encourage them to do it, including explaining that it will help them with component 1 and component 2, and with progression beyond GCSE, either professionally or in further education. So you will be doing your very best to encourage students of the importance to do the work. You have to do internal processes, and then the what's sent off will go along with your authentication record to say what they've done is theirs, and the centre-based document, and that should be okay.
Would it be worth providing you with extra information regarding individual students who may, for one reason or another, not partake in it now that they know it doesn't count towards their final qualification?
So the only time when that is okay is through illness, and there's there are instructions in the instructions for in the JCQ document, instructions for conducting non-examination assessments. You see on the screen here, I've got the document. It's in your package, page 23-24. Long-term absence can be catered for by contacting the awarding body in terms of spec cons, special considerations, but a special consideration is not a student that is just refusing to work because they don't think it's worth anything. What we look for is for the centres to do their utmost to make the students understand the value. And the thing is, Ofqual have insisted that it's part of the qualification going forward. So illness is dealt with by the special considerations, but in terms of delivery,
my main concern is probably about a 70% split of students who will carry on working with this, but I've got about a 30% split of students who, because they've read the decision, they are now disengaged from it, despite the fact that I will tell them how important it is and how useful it will be. It's going to be very difficult for me to motivate these students to get involved. I've even spoke to parents about this, and I've had a couple of parents, as negative as it sounds, who have also said, well, why would they bother doing it?
So the answer is that if student work isn't there, I put up the JCQ document that I've attached in the materials as well. If the sample of student work doesn't provide evidence the centre has met the requirements, it goes into a malpractice investigation.
If I've given them the opportunity to do 20 hours and I've tried my best to get them to do the 20 hours, but a student has for one reason or another refused to do so, that's not malpractice.
You have to do what you can with your internal processes to insist that they do it.
My quandary there.
No, I completely get your quandary.
Isn't it, you know?
I completely get your quandary. You should do everything you can to encourage the students to be compliant and to do what needs to be done. And you know, in talking to parents as well, what's important is that Ofqual have insisted that it's a part of the qualification that needs to be done and evidenced. So, you know, it's not optional now. It still needs to be done. I hear what you're saying, and it's going to be difficult, and there are going to be students who will push back. The centre has to do everything they can, and then the head of centre has to be happy to sign the declaration that the requirements.
That's why I was asking. Would it be worth, for example, I've got one particular student who has not engaged from the start with the whole course. However, he's still entered. When I provided his coursework, there won't be hardly anything there. Would it be worth providing supplementary information saying, you know, these sanctions have been taken into place for the student. They were given the 20 hours opportunity, but failed to take advantage of those 20 hours.
Probably makes sense, because on a case-by-case basis, that would have to be considered. So I don't see, there's no reason why not to include that information.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I couldn't be more clear.
Hi, yes, I want to find out if we are allowed to do the original NEA, as in the dancer one, or do we now have to stick with this voting one?
Yeah, if you did, if you don't have evidence that you had already started on the, what was the date of August?
We have not started at all as of
then you
today.
you have to do the new one.
Oh.
Sorry, that's assessment a sticking.
Boo-hoo, it's ridiculous.
I've had some
sorry
people
to complain, but it is absolutely ridiculously hard, and I can't stand it.
I'm really sorry. I would love to have let you do either of them, but they're sticking by the process that's already in place, which is if you hadn't started, then you have to do the new one. I have to say also, not that it's any help to you, but I've had people complain that the voting one is far simpler. So I don't know how that goes.
The voting
really
one
sorry.
is far simpler.
Yeah, I've had complaints of people that had finished on the other one and then saw the voting one and wished they hadn't.
I see.
Strange. But that's your answer, Samantha. I'm sorry. That's how it is. They want the if you hadn't started on the first one, it needs to be the second.
Yeah, colleagues have talked about how difficult it is going to be to motivate students when they know it doesn't count. Let's say, for example, I have a student who doesn't do the timetabled sessions. Can the sessions run at lunchtime or after school?
Well, the sessions have to be locked down and have to be
that's very simple. I've got access to a control that does that,
and supervised. So if you feel, if your head of centre feels that you've met the requirements and they're happy to sign the centre declaration form, then that's, you know, not my or our question to say when and how you run the sessions.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Hi Tim, sorry, this is Saron. I have a question from one of our questions was, can you clarify how prescriptive our feedback will be to students?
Okay, thank you, Saron. Okay, so the question about how prescriptive the feedback, it's completely open to you. You can be as prescriptive as you want. The idea is that the exercise should be enriching for the students, and if a student is blocked or struggling in any way, then you can help them to move forward with the feedback, which can be very prescriptive if necessary, less prescriptive if not required. A student who is really good and really engaged and has maybe missed an opportunity where they could have done something differently or even better, it's also fine to intervene and give them that feedback. So it's completely open. I've unmuted you if you'd like to try and ask your question. I'd be interested to hear.
Hello.
Hi.
Actually, I took my name out for some reason. You said to take my name out. All right. I've got a question about if next year we're looking at which exam board to go with. Surely, if there's 20 hours which is not going to be marked, you would want to be with a board that lets you help your students. a real world experience of doing a project is that you can have, I'm not so worried about the internet, but you can have looking at your notes, looking at resources, asking help. You've said about discussion among yourselves, and you said about feedback. But if I was looking at the cohort for next year, I would want that extra help. Is that likely to change?
Definitely. Well, no. Is it likely to change? I want it to change, and we have had commitment that it will be reviewed. And the more we hear from teachers like you with sensible suggestions like you've just made, the better. The better the chances that we have, you know, the ability to make it a proper, enriching and useful experience rather than a slightly unrealistic experience that it is now. I mean, it was locked down because it was assessment, and you know that whenever something has to be an assessment, there's extra pressures to and sometimes move away from real world, fully enriching kind of experiences. And so we have moved away from that, and for the 2019 cohort, we do want. I very much want to review it, and you know, along the lines that you've just stated. Please do email me with your requirements for staying with us.
All right. Thank you. All right.
Thank you. Thank you. I've just given you the mic. I've unmuted you. If you'd like.
Okay, it's me again, and it's about the same question that I asked previously, but I just want to clarify because although the students hadn't started the physical work, we initially, obviously, as a class, we were looking at the first NEA, that dancer one.
Yeah.
And then we were told about the hoo-ha, and we had mock exams. And our school said, wait, hold back because of all this, and no one, you know, so we didn't start it, but the students actually saw it. Now I've shown them this other one, and for all of them, they are all sort of saying, Miss, this is so hard. And so, you know, it's just,
why don't you look at putting together a case for that you had actually started the old one? You know, if you'd spent time looking at it with them, then maybe that constitutes that you started.
We had literally just introduced the thing with them and explained the exam, the rules and everything, and then we had literally started and shown them the controlled assessment, and then all of this hoo-ha happened, and so our exam officer said, carry on with revision for mock exams, let's stop, put on hold, and
okay, but if you had started it, then you have you can request that you're allowed to finish it. So I would contact ePortfolio@pearson.com and make your case.
Okay, all right. I'll so who was that? Should I contact? Sorry.
ePortfolio@pearson.com. Okay. They have a process. I think what they do is when a centre says we started on the first one, they have a form, and it asks you to complete the form saying how long you've done and what evidence you have of it. So if you started it, you started it.
Okay. All right. I'll have a word with our exam officer.
Yeah, it'll be the decision of that group, ePortfolio. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, good luck.
Sorry to hassle you with that.
I hate to hear you.
It's just been, you know, I've now got all my 25 students really annoyed because they think,
yeah, I hate to hear you. So sad. Let's hope they let you do the first one.
Okay, thank you.
This is just in response to the previous question. I was in the same situation, but I'd actually done around about I think it was 13 hours when the call was made to switch it. Evidence that I had to provide to ePortfolio was logs, network logs of the specific loggings of when they were doing it. And the feedback I got was that anybody who'd done sort of around about 8 hours actual physical work on it could continue with the old one. So my centre is continuing with the old one. But if it was less than 8 hours of physical work, actual physical work on the network, with that you could provide evidence for, then you had to start the new one.
Hadn't heard that 8 hour.
But that was I mean, I spoke direct to somebody from ePortfolio on that. That's what they said. They said we're looking at around about 8 hours of physical work, actual. Okay. Which I had to get a statement from my head as well. To say that he's seen this work, and it was a bit of a good few hours worth of work anyway to get it all together. Okay, well, thanks for that heads up. That's I'd never heard of that threshold before, so learning for me too. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, I have a question in chat. When will the decision be made about conditions for 2019? So it will be in advance of September 2018. So when that new project is published, can I clarify, if I'm giving my students 20 hours to do the work and they're following the requirements, that even if their work is limited as they're not motivated, this is my confirmation at the time and follow the restrictions, this would be okay. As we discussed earlier with another colleague, it's absolutely vital that you make it clear to students that it is not optional. Then you need to do everything you can as a centre to deliver the 20 hours and for the students to engage and provide work. After that, you send it in and...
with the changes which are all coming into effect with this, do you envision that the GCSE and the IGCSE computer science could be merged into one? Because we're looking at whether we can switch to the IGCSE at the moment, which includes the 3-hour practical exam and I think it's 90-minute written exam. But with all the changes which have happened from the 2013 specification to the 2016 specification, is there likely to be further changes to the current GCSE specification in the next couple of years? Would you picture it?
So yeah, we're being asked to make recommendations for for a spec to replace this spec for the 2020 certification students. So we have been asked, all awarding bodies have been asked to propose a solution going forward. I'm very much in favour of that solution being a model like the IGCSE, which I happen to think is a really nice way of combining testing of or assessment of coding and knowledge of computer science. I think it's a nice mixture. It remains to be seen whether that model will be adopted or something similar to it, but in terms of subject content, it's very likely to be very, very similar. There's no, from my understanding, so if you look at the subject content for the IGCSE, it's practically identical to the GCSE.
Yeah, there's only 2 or 3 bullet points which are different across the whole course. It's just that the emphasis that you'd give on different aspects of it. So if you were to be focusing on the 2 theory papers for the IGCSE, you'd obviously have more focus on that. But if you're delivering the IGCSE, you'd have a 50-50 focus because you'd have the 3-hour practical exam.
Yeah, but it's likely to be a 2-component model as well. The new GCSE. So I think it could be very much like the IGCSE. I mean, I don't know what the other awarding bodies are saying. I know OCR have an IGCSE computer science, but it requires a pre-release, which I know Ofqual are not keen on. But I guess what I'm saying is we don't know, but it's likely to be something like the IGCSE model. It'll certainly not have an NEA. We'll probably revert to 2 components. And I like component 2 in the IGCSE. I think it's a really elegant solution. I mean, it's got the problem, which means that the 3-hour exam will need computers. So there's a issue of how large cohorts can be managed by centres, but there are other qualifications where that's addressed as well. So thanks for the question. It's interesting. It remains to be seen.
Perfect. Thank you.
You have the mic.
So daughter keeps trying to call me at the same time. I'm on my phone. Just to be clear, if a student gives it up halfway through as it's too hard and they can't do it, and I make them sit there for the 20 hours that we've got timetabled, as long as I comment about that, is that going to be okay?
If they stop because of winter, you're able to now help them move on by giving them guidance and tips and comments and feedback. So it's worth getting them to attempt to get to an end. Now, you know, when we monitor what arrives at our station, you know, it's clearly a difficult task to look at work from a wide variety of students and say, well, that took 20 hours and that didn't. You know, that's going to be a very subjective look. I think the most important thing will be the authentication forms from the head of centre and the teacher and student, that what has been sent in is their work, and that the head of centre is saying that the requirements have been met.
Okay, so I mean, I am the only computer science teacher in the school, so I'm head of centre and I'm a teacher. So, you know, I also had to do my own marking, and for moderation, it was impossible. I had to ask the teacher from another school or get someone in privately, you know, to pay them to moderate. So what I'm saying is I'm one-man band or woman.
The head of centre, though, is the headmaster of the school or headmistress.
Yeah, but when I signed the forms last year, I just filled in the mark scheme and the final form. I don't know that they filled anything in. I thought that page 7 was all me. I think I signed it all.
Page 7, I'm showing it on the screen for everyone now, is you. You're the assessor. You're the teacher. The centre declaration form is signed by the head teacher or a member of the SLT. This is new. Yes,
oh,
this is
new.
Yeah.
Right. It wasn't there last year. All right.
No.
Okay. So that's the centre declaration form.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is all I'm saying. You're going to look and weigh up the amount of work to see, does it look like 20 hours? But as long as I've got a note, not that they were ill, but that they were just, they found it so hard and they did their best and they did attend 20 hours. So you're just going to look at the declaration form at that point. Are you? Or do you still need this from me?
So we need, the work that every student has done, and we need the 2 forms, the page 7 from the NEAR and the centre declaration form. It will go on CD, DVD to Pearson in, where is it, Harrogate? I can't remember, and it will be controlled.
So no random sample anymore?
So we'll sample from the set that you send us.
Yeah. Okay, all right.
But you don't have to select a sample, you just stick it all on a CD.
Stick it all on a CD, all right.
Okay. DVD or memory stick.
All right. And I mean, I suppose we all just want to know, there's an element of trust here, and we shouldn't at this point, but you know, we know our obligations. We don't just sign forms and we're not going to open ourselves up to misconduct. But how much monitoring is really going to be done? I mean, one student can write 10 pages and one can write 3, you know.
You're completely right, Lisa. I mean, you know, if students when we look at work which will come from centres which were all done under the complete control when it did count, you know, one student's work is going to look like 2 hours of work because they were weak, you know, and another kid who might be a genius and did it in, you know, 2 hours total, it might look like, you know, you're right, it's really, really difficult to judge.
Oh, all right. So all I'm saying is we can expect to hear from you about, we'll submit it in May. If there's any queries, we would then hear back from what? Not a moderator, somebody from within your.
Yeah, it's going to be. No, it's not going to be moderated. It's going to be monitored. That's going to be an internal exercise, and they're going to be recruiting and training people to do that in our data center in, I should know where it is, but I can't remember. Maybe it's in the north of the country somewhere. We have it's where all of the paper forms are posted to by exams officers.
All right. I mean, I just wouldn't want any student at their detriment to be disqualified from the whole exam because of some poor attempt that they did in this control.
I understand. Yeah. I think we just need to try and all do our best in this. And you're right. It's going to be trust and good practice and professionalism.
Yes. Lovely. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. You've got the mic.
Oh, hi. Actually, I have a question about the tasks. Actually, I'm teaching GCSE computer science for the first time. Actually, in our centre, we are teaching it for the first time, and we are a very small school. And while going through Ofqual's consultation and then the decision, I came across something where it said students must be doing one of the tasks from the NEA. So I don't understand that, because it's only one. I mean, there is only one program or one task which has different stages. So I'm a bit confused with this sentence, that one of the tasks. So I believe they have to do all the 5 stages: analysis, design, final.
Yeah. No, they're 2 different projects. That's our problem. We put a first project out in September, and then we pulled that because there was evidence of a breach, and then the second task. So we could like colloquially refer to them as the dance competition is task 1, and then the project which superseded that is the voting project. There's one of those 2.
One of those. Okay. I have another question. Sorry, I'm taking your time. It's just related to what the other lady said previously. Once the task has been sent to you for monitoring, then will that affect their marks at all in case they haven't done really good in the NEA? Will that affect their grades?
It just needs to be seen that it's done, and then the grades are completely calculated by component 1 and component 2.
From 1 and 2, that's it. Yeah. Thank you very much, Tim.
Okay, nice talking to you.
Hi Tim, sorry, it's Saron here.
Hi Saron.
The gentleman called, he had a question, but his mic wasn't working. It says, will centres/teachers have feedback of the submitted work?
Good question. I don't know. That's a really good question. If we'll have to ask our colleagues in assessment what. I mean, I don't know. Good question. We'll have to get back to you on that. Well, let's make sure we capture that one, Saron, and get back. I mean, I think what's true to say is that the assessment team are going to be recruiting and training the monitoring personnel, and we don't know exactly what they're going to have them doing at this stage. And so whether feedback will be part of that, I don't know. It's a really good question. Will, your hand is up.
Yeah, I've got 3 questions.
3?
3. Okay, please could you elaborate on teacher feedback and how much help we can provide on the coding of the task?
As much as you want.
Right, so let's say I get a student who's got himself stuck in a bit of a loop, and it's just something really minor which will help him kind of jump to the next function, or can I help him with that?
Yeah. Don't do it for them. Make sure it's their work, but tell them, look, you know, your problem there is that you're going back on yourself and the loop's broken. So think about the structure.
But you can't do that in the you can't do that in the control sessions themselves.
Yes, you can.
Do that. Oh, you can do it in the control sessions.
You can now. Feedback is unrestricted.
So you can, okay, that wasn't clear. So as I'm supervising the students, and a student kind of goes certain stuck, I can help them.
Yeah.
Didn't know that, okay. Right, the second thing is, we've done, because as you know, Tim, I'm new in this post. My predecessor had done about 8 hours on the previous one, and he's done about 14 hours on the next one. So at this point, I could choose between the two.
I'm not sure. Have you had any contact with ePortfolio? Do you know which of the two projects they're expecting from you?
No, I've not had any contact with ePortfolio, but I do know that I've checked the logs, and he's done 8 hours before it was pulled, and on the second one, he's done 14.
So I think you need to finish the voting one then. I would, if I were you, finish the voting one and submit.
They're struggling with it. I found the other one much easier. Anyway, and then the last question is been asked to me by a colleague. What's happening with BTEC Level 2 and CIDA?
Oh, BTEC Level 2. BTEC First Award is in the 2018 performance tables and not in 2019. CIDA is in 2018 and 2019, has been submitted to DFE for inclusion in 2020, and we hope to hear sometime in February from DFE about the 2020 list. So, and also for the 2020 list, we have resubmitted a redeveloped BTEC Tech Award for Level 2. So there's a few things happening. If you want a summary of that, probably better to just email me outside of this, and I can give you a full update. You have the mic.
Hi, I wanted to find out, because I've seen various people commenting that since the NEA is no longer going to count towards marks, that the exam would now be that bit extra harder, or the grade boundaries would be increased. Is this the case, or
no, absolutely not. So the specification is fixed for component 1 and component 2, and they don't change at all. They haven't changed in design, content, or assessment. Now, grade boundaries.
Yes.
Grade boundaries is another issue, which is when the work is collected in and awarding is being done, grade boundaries are only set at that time, and I think the grade boundaries would not be any different now that they're weighted at 50% than they would have been when they were weighted at 40% each. So there's no reason why, you know, there would be any reason that the grade boundaries would be harsher now.
I see. And when we had the mock exams, obviously, I know this isn't it's got nothing to do with this forum, but with regards to the grade boundaries, like lots of people were saying, 10% per grade type of thing. Is that
it's complete guesswork? Complete and utter guesswork. I mean, I did, if you want, email me, because I looked at maths and English 9-to-1 real grade boundary results, and I mashed them together and mushed them and averaged them and retrofitted it to computer science, so that, but it's guesswork. It's just a guesswork.
If you don't mind, I will email you.
Yeah, email me and I'll send that to you. Just to put
my mind at ease, and so, you know, it's something I can work,
It's just an approach. It's not right.
Approach.
It's just it's just something to base it on. I based it on English and maths 9-to-1.
Oh, thank you. I'll email you later.
Okay, I'm happy to share that. Bye.
Hi, Tim, this is Saron again. Sorry, I'm just going to give you a question.
Okay.
She stated, if the NEA is supposed to be fair, to be a fair playing field, then why have AQA and OCR got access to the internet and Pearson does not? That was her question.
Yeah, Pearson have decided to change the control for 2018 in a limited way. AQA have not opened up access to the internet. I've seen their guidance, and they still have internet off. So I know OCR have whole scale removed lots of the controls. When we want to be fair, we're talking about being fair to our students who have undertaken our NEA task as it was, and now. So that's where we're trying to be fair. We're trying to be fair to our students.
Sorry, Tim. Another question that I've got.
No problem.
So it's she said, if you do have the sample, how can we show the highest students' work if it's not marked? Surely you need to see the range of standards, but difficult if they are not marked.
Yeah. So what Centre's been asked to do is to stick all of the students' work on a CD and ship it off. What the monitors are going to do when they look at it, I'm not sure yet. Yeah, I don't have a stronger answer than that, I'm afraid. Thanks, Sharon. Okay, there are 32 people still here. And it's 5 minutes to 5. So I'm planning, how about another 10 minutes or so? If there are questions, please let me know. Can you give feedback on the whole class, or does it have to be individual to each student? So the answer is either or. So in tightly controlled conditions where the work is going to be assessed and be part of the award, you are only allowed to give generic feedback to the whole class. In this case, if you have an individual that you can help make progress by giving them direct feedback individually, then you're free to do that now. If you have questions, get them in. Hi,
again.
Hi, Sharon.
She asked a question about 438. If you can just scroll up and just quickly read that out, it's quite a lengthy one. She wanted me to put that question forward to you again. Is that 438?
Getting there.
Perfect.
We again did about quite a few hours on this as well, but not 20 in total on one NEA. I want to know if I submit both work on NEA as 20 hours in total, would this be acceptable? There is no way I'm going to get the whole cohort to finish the NEA. They are almost revolting at the moment. Parents are not going to be supportive given the mucking around the students believe they've experienced. I feel as a school that time is better spent on revision now. So I cannot say to you to take a few hours of the two NEAs and add them together and send them in. If your centre head feels that the conditions have been met, which is 20 hours and the project which we provided, then submit it, I guess, is the only way you can go forward. If there's one of the projects which they've done more hours on, I would recommend that you do what you can to get them to finish that and submit it. Parents need to be supportive. They need to understand that it's a requirement of the qualification that they do this 20 hours, and that's why we have to take samples of work in to ensure that it's been done. So I hope that answers your question. I mean, it's not ideal, and I feel very much for your situation. I know exactly how stroppy, I'm not sure I'd call them revolting, but it can be awfully difficult when they think suddenly that there's no marks in it. You have the mic.
Hello. One quick last question. Taken that the NEA is now no longer marked and no longer part of the exam, could I suggest, or can I look forward to that instead of one task in September, you could have 2 or 3 like OPR do, so that we don't have this whole business of one's harder than another, or an NEA task is so hard that the students really don't feel like doing it. I think the essence of programming is it should be enjoyable, and different tasks appeal to different people. You've got girls, you've got boys, you've got different backgrounds. I think having one task has really been a problem. I think we could go to maybe 2 or 3 tasks like OCR do.
Interesting. Interesting points that you make. I mean, don't you compound the problem though? If you publish 3 or 4 options, don't people then look around and just try to choose the most straightforward anyway? Well, so isn't it better only having one?
You still have to do things like file writing, file reading. Yeah. You've still got all the tasks that you have to do, but it's the subject matter. You know that some people, I want to see the kids really, like last year that we had painting jobs, or we had, you know, you look at some of the other ones, they were really nice tasks. I don't know, I find this one not as accessible. I find the ones from last year, the ones from the year before, really interesting.
Yeah, I liked them as well, but they were more scaffolded, and this is part of what Ofqual insisted was not in the qualification. They didn't want a part 1, 2, 3 task. They wanted a project, a challenge that was specified in as few words as possible that really students had to try and solve. So it is a difficult, I mean, but you're right. So moving forward, we've got the option to revisit that. So your year 10 students will need to do our project that is published in September. If I doubt that we will be publishing more than one project. I suspect it will be one. You know, please email me in and make your point as strongly as possible that there should be 2 or 3 options now. The fact that we don't need to tie them rigorously to assessment grids might make that possible.
Okay, thank you. All right, will do. All right.
Thanks. Thank you. Your hand is up.
Yeah, like all colleagues, I'd like to focus on the teaching and making sure they do really well in their exams. After the 15th of May, if there's an issue with the paperwork or with the sample, will we know well in time?
Good question. I don't know the answer. I'll have to find that out. And that's similar to the question that you asked about what feedback will be given. We'll work that up. I'll take that to the assessment team, and it's a good point, isn't it? You know, 15th of May you'll submit. In 2 weeks' time, do you get a green flag so you can breathe again and just move forward? Or it's good.
That's basically what I'm asking, because if there's a problem, it's going to know about it early enough to deal with it. Because if you tell me there's a problem and the students have already sat their exams and they've already left school, there's not a lot I can do about it.
Completely correct. I'll feed that into the assessment team and ask them to give me some information about the process that they'll be undertaking and what feedback and when that will happen. Thanks for the question. Good one. Okay, I'm going to start wrapping up now, people. Thank you very much for giving me your time. I hope that you feel a little bit clearer about what the controls need to be moving forward, and keep in touch. Please email me with your very strong and sensible suggestions about how we should do this better in the future, because it really does help. I try to reflect your thoughts and views to the people developing the qualifications here, and the more I have from you, the easier that is. So I'm going to call that a day. Thank you all very much for joining.